like us in our tents. Hi guys. Yeah.
So that's from Tikawiti.
So look, you just got back from Cannes, where your short film Numb screened, and now your next short film, Skin, is premiering at the New Zealand International Film Festival. You must be feeling great.
I'm pretty stoked. I'm not gonna lie. Like I think both films were kind of done with no sort of extra plan beyond sort of like just making them, and that's the truth of it. It's been a bit of a weird few months of where it was just like, oh, we'll just make something over summer, to, oh, okay, we actually made some quality stuff.
So let's just deal with the elephant in the room here. Did Cannes change you that much? Why the sunglasses?
The sunglasses, yeah. Well, actually, like, it's a byproduct of the skin condition which I deal with in the film, which I've suffered from since I was a kid. Which is called ichthyosis. And the thing about ichthyosis is it causes extreme dry skin, like extreme dry skin. And when I was a kid, it got in my eyes and caused an eye infection, leaving two big gouges. I like to say gouges, they're just tiny little scars, but big gouges over my irises. And so when they expand or contract, it hurts.
So Skin, it's a really interesting, it's an interesting story. It's quite provocative and challenging in terms of tone, content, and even the way that you shot it. How did it come about?
Well, it actually came out of a writing course that I was doing last year. I took some time off work and just sort of focused on writing. And we had to write something personal. And like, I'd never really written anything that was personal to me before. It was a first. And so this is the story that came out. I was just, I'll just write about my skin condition. And it's sort of just like this narrative of sort of nature versus nurture sort of developed. I was like, well, let's see if I can push my own personal story to a more dramatic limit, you know, really sort of push it. So the whole thing probably took about 3 weeks to put together, but the actual sort of like from shooting to finished product, which is in the festival, it took us about a week. So it was a really kind of like fast turnaround, just passion project.
What do you think that short film offers as a medium that feature length doesn't? What can it offer to a narrative?
I sort of, it took me a while to get into short films. I don't think it's something that you grow up watching. So when you become a filmmaker, or you have aspirations of becoming a filmmaker, you really want to make features because that's what you've grown up on. That's always the end goal. And so it took me a little while to accept that in order to make features, I need to make short films to develop my craft. Then they kind of act as a bit of a calling card for what you can do. And it's just like, look, if you're interested in seeing me as a feature filmmaker, this is what I can do. That said, I've slowly over time realized that short film as a format, when they work best and the ones that I've really enjoyed are the ones that have one core idea. They make you feel one thing, they have one argument to say, and they leave you sort of scratching your head.
So what will the audience be talking about in the car ride home after seeing Skin?
Well, the central question to Skin is nature versus nurture. Is violence inherent, or is it a case of being raised to be violent? And I guess what's interesting is sort of this, that question is kind of what I want them asking on the way home. So I was never really interested in sort of presenting an answer. I guess the answer for me is like you have to make up your own mind, and you have the ability to make up your own mind.
Being such a personal story, how as a director do you prepare for that compared to something that you might not have a personal attachment to? Is the preparation different at all?
Yeah, it is hard. It is hard, and there's a certain amount of vulnerability in putting your story out there. And I think it's worth noting that it's inspired by my story. And I guess that's where it becomes tricky when you put stuff out there, is the fact that when it's inspired by your story, the line between fiction and reality is blurred. It's worrying and it's tentative, but you kind of have to do it because you kind of have to write from what you know.
So I was actually having a discussion with another film director recently where he talked a little bit about film helping to connect people involved in it into a cultural tapestry, sort of a shared experience around artistic expression. What do you think? I found it really interesting, and I wanted to know what you thought about that as a concept.
I think that film sort of buys into what our culture globally as an ever more increasing visual culture. For example, history. Like, nobody really learns about their history by picking up a book a lot of the time. Some might, and some might actually pay attention in school, but a majority of people learn it through the film industry. They learn their own history, their own idea of who they are as a people through filmmaking. We're just consuming more and more of those visual mediums, and so it's becoming the quickest way of expressing philosophies and ideas. I enjoy wanting to step up into it. I think that's my main drive, stepping up into film, is to express ideas and philosophies. The thing about when you work on somebody else's film, or whether you work on your own film, is that actually forces you to encounter someone else's heartfelt philosophies and ideas of life. It's stuff that people haven't expressed before. It's stuff they've written down and they've kept secret, and all of a sudden they have to put it out in this incredibly public medium. Even if you don't fully agree with it, if you can create like a conversation around it within the piece, then that philosophy and that idea develops into a bigger tapestry. And it becomes, when you're on set, when you're crewing something, when you're editing something, when you're filming something, you become, for however long you're on board with that, a part of that ever-evolving idea, a part of that ever-evolving philosophy that is that scene of the film or the whole film itself.
You talked a little bit about the importance of film in terms of communication and connection, but how real do you think that connection can be when it's so heavily mediated by technology nowadays?
My relationship with technology is an interesting one. I work with a heavily mediated, a heavily technologically focused medium. I started off working in theatre, which isn't, which is about sort of human connection between the actors on stage and human connection between audience members. And I think the thing about theatre is you kind of go along, this is going to sound really pretentious, but you kind of go along to feel theatre, because like a lot of the time, particularly with my experience in Shakespeare, is that the words end up just washing over you, and you get kind of wrapped up in the emotions of the characters and how they make you feel and the emotional connection between you and those characters. Film, on the other hand, I don't think does achieve that same amount of connectivity. When you watch a film, you can get into a close-up and it can be the most beautiful performance and it can choke you up and make you upset and stuff like that, but you don't necessarily feel connected to that character. I think you see yourself in that character and you get upset about it. And I think that's the biggest thing about technology, is it's a reflection of ourselves. It's like being presented to us. When we read a text message, we don't necessarily think of that person saying that text message. Kind of like a book. And that's sort of like, when you read a book, you don't really imagine that, Steinbeck's sitting down and telling you a story. The good thing about technology is the fact that it can go everywhere and share ideas instantly. We might not feel as much, but it's quicker, and it can facilitate quicker change.
So apart from the people that were going to watch The Wounded Angel anyway, who would enjoy Skin?
It's interesting, actually you should ask that, because when you go about making a film and you're pitching it to producers, a lot of the time you go in with, well, this is my target audience, these are the people who are going to like it, further down the line, these are the kind of people we can sell it to. Skin never had that. It was a film I was making for myself, really. It was processing some stuff that I'd gone through as a teenager, and I was putting it out there. It was only when I was talking to my lead actor, Ryan, and he asked me in the rehearsal process, who am I talking to? And I really struggled to answer that. I was like, I'm not entirely sure. I think you're talking to yourself. And he's like, there's not really like much I can do with that. And what he suggested, and I think really kind of developed the script for me, was that he was talking to a young person, potentially like a little brother, who suffers from this skin condition. And he was sitting down with this boy. You imagined it like in a hospital, or this kid's just been diagnosed with this skin condition. And he was sitting down with this boy and talking him through it. And he's like, this is my experience. This is what you've got in store, and this is this is the conclusion that I've come to about it. So it kind of then developed the project for me as to who it was for. It's kind of for people who were ever told that they weren't beautiful, or were ever felt vulnerable or angry with the world, or just ashamed of something inside them, something out of their control. And I guess I kind of wanted to present something hopeful for those people. So for me, that's who Skin is for.
And what's next for you, Luke?
Well, next I've got more short films. I'm just enjoying living with my partner, making films, making music videos, and writing a couple of features at the moment, which is a lot of fun.
And where can we see Skin?
Skin will be screening before The Wounded Angel at Event Cinemas at 7 o'clock on July 30th.